4 years I've been here on Easter, and we've studied and talked about the Gospel of Mark and Matthew and John, but never once have we read about the Easter story in the Gospel of Luke. So I thought we would look at Luke's account today. I invite you to stand as you're able in reverence for the reading of God's Word. Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, the women came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found that the stone was rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified, and they bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again?" And then they remembered his words. And returning from the tomb, they told all of this to the 11 and to all of the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. These words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and he ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. And then he went home, amazed and perplexed at what had happened. The word of the Lord. And you may be seated. Well, there is something exceptionally beautiful and touching about what Mary Magdalene and these other women were attempting to do on that first Easter morning. Armed with costly spices that they have carefully prepared, they have only one mission in mind: to bring as much honor and dignity to the body of their friend Jesus as they could possibly do. It is a touching, tender, beautiful act of kindness that they wish to perform. And yet, it is also an act that has a darker side. For it is their admission that the life of Jesus is over, and that the relationship that they enjoyed with him has come to an end. The past 3 years have been wonderful, they must have thought to themselves. But now it is over. Jesus is dead, and it is time to return to business as usual. It's back to the reign of death, back to embalming bodies and grieving at tombs. Mary Magdalene and the other women have suffered what might be called a collapsed faith. And it is entirely understandable given all that they have been through. Less than a week ago, they had had a vibrant and living love affair with this man Jesus. They sat at his feet as full disciples. They hung on his every word. They delighted in his company. They gladly served him in his mission. But now, their love has been crushed. What was once a vibrant thing has become a dull and lifeless thing. The pain of watching their friend be tortured and die along in a slow death has decimated their spirits. All that is left now to accomplish is to accommodate themselves once again to the reign of death and the triumph of violence in the world. The angels describe it well. They are stuck, looking for the living among the dead. They've lost their vision for life, and they have instead become obsessed with death. Their faith is a lifeless, hollow shell of what it once was. And perhaps some of us here this morning can relate to that. It is all too easy for our faith to collapse. We would like most of us to be full of spiritual life, but we've seen or we've just experienced too many crucifixions, too many injustices in this world, too many deaths of dear friends, and too much suffering, too few resurrections to break out of our orbit of this death-filled planet. As we've been talking about this Lenten season, many of us have been wandering in the dark woods for a long time. We've been searching for a way out, but it seems like the darkness has closed all means of escape. Many of us, like these well-meaning women, are still congregating together to embalm the dead Christ. Once a week, on Sunday morning, we gather to preserve him and to honor him, and yet not to rise with him. This is true of all churches to some degree, and of some churches to a great degree. A woman, for instance, once came to church one Easter and was so moved by the choir that she shouted out, "Amen," when they were done. An usher quickly hurried over to her and told her that she would have to be quiet, that they just didn't do that kind of thing in this church. But after the Easter sermon, she was again so moved that she stood up in her seat and she shouted out, "Hallelujah, amen, Pastor." And the ushers once again rushed over to her and quieted her and said that she just had to be quiet or else she was going to have to lead worship. I'm so sorry, the woman said. I didn't mean to be disruptive, but I've just been so filled with joy since I met Jesus that I just have to speak out. "Well," said the usher, "I don't know where you met Jesus, lady, but you certainly didn't meet him here." Sad but true. The risen Christ is indeed hard to find in some churches. Will Campbell tells the story about a man who likened the church to an Easter chick that he bought for his daughter one Easter. It was a beautiful little white chicken, just full of life and spunk, and it was just so cute that her daughter just treasured it like it was a prized jewel. She took it home and loved that little chick. But soon the chick got older, and it became downright ugly. As it turned out, the chick had been dyed white by its seller, and it was actually a Rhode Island red. And not a pretty little white chick at all. And so the half-dyed chicken was thrown out into the chicken yard. And all of the other chickens out there knew somehow, they just knew that this chicken was a little bit off. It was a little bit different than all of the other chickens. And so they packed the chickens and they chased it all around the yard. And before long, it lost all of its white vibrancy. And that chicken was behaving just like every other chicken before long. Says Campbell, the chicken world turned that beautiful Easter chick around. And now you can't tell it from all the other chickens. They're all just alike. The Easter chick is just another one. Sadly, that can be a pretty accurate story of what often happens. The world packs and chases us around and wears us all down with all of the minor and all of the major crucifixions that we see, and we become just another dull, ugly cog in a dull, ugly world. Salt loses its saltiness. The light gets hid under a bushel. The vine is cut off from the branches, and a once vibrant faith collapses, and all you've got left is a bunch of people gathering together to lovingly embalm a great but dead prophet. Oh, I feel it. I feel it on more than one Sunday, don't you? It's like a winter that refuses to lose its icy grip. Our souls are weighed down by the power of death. It feels like it's always Lent and never Easter. Sometimes I feel like one of those Japanese soldiers who is stationed as a lookout on some of those tiny islands in the Pacific during World War II. Have you heard the stories about these men? These men were stationed alone and maybe with one other person, almost isolated, out of necessity. Over time, some of these Japanese soldiers were either forgotten, or they were lost, or they were presumed dead. Their radios broke and their batteries died. And so when the war was over, they had no way of knowing. They had no way of finding out news. The fighting had stopped, but the news hadn't reached them. One soldier, a man by the name of Hiro Onada, actually held out for 29 years on a small island in the Philippines. He received several pamphlets informing him that the war was over, but after careful examination, he decided that they were enemy propaganda, and that the war was still raging on. They just wanted him to try to surrender. Fake news, as we would call it today, was what he thought it was, and so he remained true to his old vows and his old way of life. 29 years. It wasn't until the Japanese government finally flew out his old commanding officer that he finally was convinced that the war was over. And so on March 9th, 1974, Hiro Onada finally surrendered by turning over his sword, his still functioning rifle, over 500 rounds of ammunition and several live grenades, as well as the dagger that his mother had given him in 1944 to kill himself if he was ever captured by the enemy. 29 years! Can you imagine? 29 years tormented by tropical heat and rats and mosquitoes. Always on the alert, never at peace, all for nothing, because the war was over. Hiro and others like him were under the rule of a new, kinder government, but they kept living in a world that no longer existed, despite attempts to convince them otherwise. If only they would have believed the testimony, the words of other people, they would realize that they were free to leave their survival mode of existence and truly live. They were free. This, of course, is the message of Easter. We are free. The decisive battle in cosmic history has been fought. The war is over, and Jesus Christ has been vindicated as the Son of God. He is who He said He was. He is risen. Why do we keep looking for Him amongst the dead? He's not in any of the graveyards that this world has constructed to contain Him. Ollie, Ollie, Oxenfree. Come out, wherever you are, right? It's the Easter proclamation. Come out from your hopelessness. Come out from your despair. Come out from your grief. Come out from your sin and all that binds you to that which is dead. The risen Christ is here this morning with healing in His wings, and He calls each of us by our names out of death. Everything has changed. The old is dead and gone. God makes all things new. That's the promise of Easter. And it's not fake news. And and it's not an April Fool's joke. Don't be a hero Onada who kept living in a world that no longer lives, who kept suffering because he wouldn't believe. Don't be like the disciples either, who when the women go and tell them that Christ is risen, dismiss it all as a wise and an idle tale. Oh, it's just those women, they think. Don't be like them. Shake off your despair and join Peter as he runs to the tomb to check out the women's story. The other disciples, all of them, they're either too depressed or too lazy or too prejudiced against women or too comfortable with the world as it is to investigate the claims of resurrection. But Peter runs to the tomb. That's a lot of us, too, isn't it? Most people, when they're children, uncritically accept Christ, and then when they become adults, they uncritically reject Christ. Have you ever really given it some serious thought, this resurrection business? Have you checked out a good book on the subject? Have you committed yourself perhaps to hanging around a faith community long enough to see if there might be something to what they're doing and what they're saying? If you're going to be a person of integrity, if you're going to be a truth seeker in your life, then you ought to do that. And indeed, you may well go home bewildered a little bit like Peter, but you may well also discover a power for living that you never dreamed was possible. But you'll never know unless you investigate. Why is it? Why are we looking for living among the dead? Do you find yourself with a collapsed faith this morning? Or perhaps you never really had much of a faith to begin with. That's okay. Either way, Easter Sunday is a great day to let God resurrect your faith. I'm going to close with a story of British journalist Malcolm Muggeridge. Muggeridge was a convinced Marxist who pursued his politics with an almost evangelical zeal. And so he went to Russia in the 1950s to do a story about the Communist Party and the collapse of religion in the Soviet Union. And for his article that he was doing, he interviewed people in the Kremlin, he interviewed peasants, and he interviewed well-to-do people. But then he made a critical mistake. He went to the Russian Orthodox Church on Easter morning. He shouldn't have done that, because the Russian Orthodox Church has a tremendously rich Easter heritage. The glory of Easter, that's the heart of Russian Orthodoxy. And that glory reaches a fever pitch on Easter Sunday when at the conclusion of the service, the priest bellows out, "Christ is risen!" And the people respond, "Christ is risen indeed." It is a thrilling moment. And in fact, that's how we're going to end our sermon here today in a few moments. Well, Muggeridge, as he tells the story, went into this packed church on Easter. And at the end of the service, the priest shouted out, "Christ is risen!" And there was this roar from the congregation as they shouted back, "He is risen indeed!" And Muggeridge, the convinced atheist, the confirmed Marxist, looked out on the faces of the people in that church on that day, faces caught up in the glory of Easter, faces radiant with joy, and he realized in an instant that they were right and that Joseph Stalin was wrong. And Muggeridge never turned back from following Jesus all of the rest of his life. What a gift. Friends, why are we searching to do it together. Ready? Okay. Christ is risen!
He is risen indeed!
Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you. Ushers, it's okay. It's okay. Praise be to the